Hello.
Hello. What up, dude?
What's up, dude?
How you doing, man? How's it going?
Pretty good, pretty good. How
Uh,
you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm a little tired. I'm a little tired. A little drained. Uh,
Oh my God.
from my
Am I not
day.
gonna get my money's worth?
You're gonna definitely get your money's worth. I always deliver. But yeah, I had a really like awkward sleep day yesterday. It was a little like basically almost like none. So
Yeah, I
I
got you.
yeah, yesterday was a crazy day. Uh,
Yeah, I logged in this morning at I don't know what time it was, but it said that you were online 4 hours ago, and this was at like noon,
yeah.
I think.
Well, it's you know exactly what's up. But dude, we're gonna give you the best coaching of your life. Let's fucking get this shit
Nice,
going. So,
nice.
uh, uh, refresh. I don't know if you told me in the email. I can't remember, but refresh me if you did. Anyways, Lee Grace and kind of what you want to work on, and we'll go from there.
All right, I started playing in November, but I took a break from like January to May. I'm Plat 1 as Zerg, and I'm struggling with like two base Terran timings and things of that nature. And then if I can get out of that, then I just lose in the late game to Thors. So
Okay. Yeah, I mean that sounds like a lot of Zergs are like fucking Thors, right? Oh god, Thors are good. Uh, So yeah, I mean we'll talk about it. We can definitely jump into it. We can see what's going down for your. So do you want to specifically focus on ZVT today then?
yeah, for sure.
Okay, so yeah, we'll focus on that for sure, and we'll help you get something situated, something going that's gonna help you out a lot there. But I guess are you on BattleNet right now then?
Yeah, I'll message you.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, we'll just get a party started. We'll get it going. We'll look at your stuff. And you said Plat. So with Plat, I imagine there might be some little hiccups in your build from time to time. That'll
Hmm.
definitely be things we're gonna really focus on the most. But I'll also see what your build looks like. And I mean, are you also playing Roach Hydra styles basically?
Yeah, it's pretty much just bronze GM. That's it.
Okay. Yeah. So we'll just clean it up.
Yeah, it just feels like I can't. It feels like I can't get the economy going before the timing hits, and then he always has more workers and more army than me.
Okay. Yeah. Uh, sounds sounds reasonable. Sounds good. We'll we'll break it down. Just go ahead and hit. Yeah, there, perfect, dude. You know what's going on. And the
I learned from last time.
lobby host shit. Yeah, then we're good to go.
Here we go.
Nice, dude. And then yeah, as well. Just always interrupt me or talk to me and ask me questions, all that good stuff if you ever want to.
Okay, cool.
But let's look at this. Let's break this down. Let's break this down. What's going on for you this game? Okay, you got killed by a really early timing. Uh,
Yeah, I had more replays of like him actually getting to Thors and stuff, but I somehow deleted all the replays in the folder. And I got lucky. I played against the same dude back to back my last two games about an hour ago,
okay,
and he did the same thing in both games.
okay.
I
Uh,
guess that's lucky. He beat me both times.
yeah. Well, honestly, even if you won the game, I would say we could still coach off of it. It's totally fine
Hmm.
because there's always little things that you do that could be always fixed and stuff like that about like tendencies you have. So far you're doing a 17 hatch against Terran. I like that a lot. I actually prefer 17 hatch against Terran. I think it's better. Uh, and then you're doing legit, just like full on B2GM with gas. It looks like with your pool. Uh, like so far you're if you take your gas at 20, which should be now, yeah, your timings are all good so far. With your initial opener, we'll see what you do with the rest. But yeah, so far so good. You. We'll see what your rally looks like in a second. Uh, okay, looking good. Everything again so far. Everything's looking good. Okay, so your opener up to this point, your opener looks fine. Now let's look at your overlord. So there's not too much that needs to be scouted. Like with your, I'm not telling you have to like scout everything thoroughly all the time, but I do think your Overlord needs to be used a little bit more than it was at the start. And we'll just say you have two choices right now, I would say, with your Overlord. And I think option one is the lazy option, which is going to most likely keep your Overlord alive. Like, very likely it's going to stay alive and it won't die, which would be you go back to that cliff right now where it just left, and then you just kind of chill there and it stays, whatever. Now you have vision of the front of his natural. Another
Hmm.
option you have is you actually go deeper into the ramp a little bit, like you just go north instead of like to the west,
Right.
because like your overlord right now is actually chilling at the worst spot possible. Uh, just because like if two marines show up out of nowhere, it's gonna die. If one marine showed up,
Right.
you could get it back to the cliff. But if it sits here for a while and now suddenly it's two, you're going to definitely die. And what should definitely be happening is you should go north for it a little bit, and you could just see like what he's doing with the front of his base. And if you saw double depot barracks, no add-on and no other building around it at all. I would not tell you had to scout all the way in to see his second barracks. You don't have to necessarily do that, but
Mm.
just seeing that he has no add-on, like no add-on and no other building next to it, that's a bit of a sign. And if I were to ask you, just if you don't get this right, it's okay. This is a little bit of a weird one, but if I were to ask you, okay, well, if you look at the front of his base, just the very front of his ramp, right now at this point in the game, where like his SUV is building a second depot,
Okay.
what do you think that would tell you? And also the fact that you've seen that he has a natural, like what do you think
Uh,
could happen to you right now?
he's 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 probably building a Reaper instead of getting an add-on. And then besides that, I have no idea.
Okay,
Oh, he already actually has a Reaper out.
yeah.
So no, I don't know.
So I think your Overlord also might have saw it too. Let's see. So if your Overlord also goes further, yeah, he did see it.
Yeah, I did.
So that's fine. But a barracks also, you could always see the lights lighting up on a barracks whenever it's building anything, even if it's an add-on or if it's a unit. Like no matter what, if it's just producing something. And the fact that you would see that his barracks right now, looking at it, has no production value at all. It has literally nothing going on. Nothing's happening. I would be wondering right now. I like that right there. The fact that he's walling you out of his base this fast, uh, with an SCV, which is that's fine. That's not a big deal. Uh, but he's not producing an add-on, and he's also not producing a unit. I would be like, okay, either this guy forgot to start making a unit, or he's just prioritizing something else right now for the fact that he's not building a unit. Maybe he can't afford it yet because he's doing something else. So I would say the chances are that he either went for a very early gas, like before he went like depot and then a gas, or even gas then depot, then barracks. Like he just took a really early gas would be one of the ways I would read this, and he's going
Right.
for a really early factory, like and he's building it in like it's somewhere else on the map. Either it could be deeper in his base or it could be proxied, but I would say the fact that he has a natural means the chances of it being proxied are very low. Because generally when people want to proxy you, they want to do it fast. They don't want to do a like, oh, I'm gonna take my tech late, but I'll proxy it anyways. Like that's really not how proxies go. Proxies are all about like prioritizing the proxy first. So the fact that he has a natural means the proxy chance is very low because you can't go for a really fast additional building of like tech while also going for a natural. So the natural thing definitely makes it seem like he's defensive, but just saying that he's not building a unit out of his barracks feels like there's some type of like tech going on. It seems like it. If I had to just guess, uh, and then also there's some kind of cost. So going for a really early gas and a factory would be one of those ways it would go, or going for a double gas really fast, and then like he takes the first gas when he takes the barracks to make the Reaper like he did, and then he takes a really fast second gas. Like just basically some type of cost in his base that's unusual is probably happening right now, just because he's not building anything out of that barracks. Like the fact that he's not building anything out of that barracks is a huge sign of okay, this is weird.
Yeah. So would this be like maybe aggression or
It's
Just
I don't think it's
his
gonna
build is
be
inefficient.
it's not gonna be aggression really early because he has a natural. That rules out aggression altogether. And if it is
Okay.
aggression, it's harassment. It's like it'll be harassment that you could deal with queens basically. Like for
Hmm.
the early stage. Uh but what I would say is it's definitely either like something is unusual about it and like the chances of it being a teched factory is high. It is like again, we can obviously see that it's not right now, but the chances of it being that should be high because
Hmm.
think about this. Okay, this is why I say that. And if you're wrong in this situation and you read it incorrectly, it's totally fine. You would be able to deal with it just fine. This I'll explain why. It seems like it should be a factory that's teched really fast because if it's a barracks timing, the fact that he's not producing out of his barracks is already making that barracks timing delayed because he's wasting time not building anything. So he's not, and he's also not setting up add-ons. So he's going to be making it for number one. He's going to make units really slow, and every second that goes by, number two, he's going to have a slower and slower and slower upgrade because he's not doing anything with the barracks in terms of tech lab or a reactor. So he's going to have both slow produced units and also very late delayed tech units, and that's just seeing the fact that he's not producing anything out of the barracks. He's not making a second Reaper. He's not making a Marine after the first Reaper. He's making literally nothing. Not making an add-on. It's just idle. So like every second that goes by, it makes this type of a timing weaker and weaker and weaker and weaker. Uh, and it's just it's something you shouldn't really find that intimidating. The more logical thing would be there's a factory in his base somewhere because that would still have a chance to do something. But even then, the fact that he's not making an add-on out of his barracks while he makes a factory to swap over weakens his build like crazy. Like this just
Hmm.
makes me feel like this build is inefficient. Watching the barracks do nothing, and you could see that with your overlord if you just looked at it and then went back to the cliff.
Okay.
So,
Cool.
so as a response to this, basically all I'm trying to say is the natural is like 90% of it. That's huge. That's like okay, well he's not going to be aggressive now in terms of like all in aggression. It's very unlikely that he's going to fucking just hit the cancel button on this and then just suddenly pull all SCVs and attack you. Uh, because like you can't make the command center this fast and also have like 4 racks or like like I said before, like a really fast proxied factory, etc., etc., etc. Like you can't be that all in if you take a natural. Like there's limitations there. So that means he's already not going to be all in. Like or if it becomes one, it's going to be very delayed.
Okay.
And then just seeing the fact that the other 10% of it, the little bit of it, is seeing that he's very inefficient with that barracks would make me feel like I am more than happy to even furthermore fully saturate my 2 base setup without having to worry about shit. So basically, the read from this should be you should feel very comfortable now to just drone up the 2 bases fully, like with literally no cares in the world. So if you do shit like make anything beyond these 4 Zerglings, I would say it's a mistake. But before you're fully saturated. All right. So do you have any questions about that logic right there about why that makes sense?
No, that all makes really clear sense. If
Okay.
let's say I did poke him with the Overlord here, and I see that he's taking the second gas, do I take anything from that?
Yeah. I'll tell you. We'll talk about that. But I would say, first of all, I would not poke all the way to the gas. If
Okay.
with the first Overlord, I would say just poke the ramp, and like you would want to scout like we're saying, just have enough vision not only to see the 2 depots in the barracks, but also maybe have a little bit more vision where you can see maybe like if you think about how big a supply depot is, put that on top of the supply depot that's already there, and if you see no building above that far up, so like you don't go that much further up at all, you just go up maybe like a couple more pixels of vision after the depot
Mm.
and the barracks, and if you see nothing is there, you'd be like, all right, let's turn around, let's go back. I mean, if you paid attention to the fact that he's not making anything out of the barracks, you could then go deeper if that was your read and go, okay, and you go, okay, well, he's not even making a marine, so I can scout deeper now, and I'm not really afraid of dying because he has to then make the marine and then kill my overlord. But the fact that if you let's just say the barracks started lighting up as you started flying closer to it, I would definitely tell you to turn around and go back to that cliff on the front of his natural, uh,
Okay.
because the thing about what Terran will do usually is they will usually build their their buildings in general next to each other with, so they can just have a faster add-on swap. If they build like the factory, let's say behind the mineral line, and then they build the barracks in front of the ramp here, and then they swap all the way over like that, that's like an additional like 20 seconds of time of just lost production because they have to fly so far over, which is awful.
Right.
Uh, so yeah, like they're always going to be close together if he's going to actually use them for add-on swapping, and you can see that he's not making an add-on, then yeah. But I would definitely say if he's not making anything out of the barracks at all the whole time, and you were scouting up above it, and you were like, okay, well he's not making anything, I guess I'll go deeper to the gas. The chances of it being double gas are higher, or the chances of it being like a really, really fucking fast third command center are higher because there is very few reasons why he should be making a unit out of this barracks. Like there would have to be some type of a trade-off, like a really hardcore gas investment or a really hardcore economy investment to logically make sense of why he's not going for not only an add-on, but also not going for a unit at all. Like, where is his money going? All right, and then so that would, I feel like that would all make sense there. And again, all you'd need to see is the barracks for that. I like that do like that you're eventually going back to the cliff now, but yeah, I feel like seeing that barracks would have been huge, just to be like, wow, you're doing nothing. I will say this, I think you made a good read, or a good reaction, even though you didn't have a good read. The fact that you're taking a third before you're saturated on your natural. If you're doing a B2GM style, this is not standard what you're doing right now for at all. The fact that the fact that you are going for a third before you make a layer and before you make your roach horn is awkward. But because if he was going to be aggressive, it would fuck you up, like hard. But he's not going to be aggressive, as we just talked about. Yet, like if he is aggressive, it's going to be harass. It's not going to be all in. It's not going to be like shit you can't handle with a couple wings and a queen. So your build read or your build reaction is actually good this specific game. But normally I would say if he was making an add-on really fast and he was going for like a 2-1-1 or something more solid, like an actual like aggressive build, you definitely would want to prioritize your larva and your third. Now you are also I'm gonna see actually when you built your third, and I'm gonna see your larva situation. Exactly. Alright, so you have no larva. So far you're doing great. If you would just keep spending your larva now, I would say your build is looking solid, but I do think this Reaper distracts you a lot when it comes into your base. So the Reaper shows up, you stop macroing, and you double inject. I do not actually like this double inject. I'm gonna say this, and this is why. You can okay, I'm starting to dislike your build. You're doing too many costs way too often, and that you can't afford. So you could have done double inject if you went for a 2-base setup, and that was going to be how you wanted to go about it, because you don't have the cost of the third. You have 3 costs. There's 3 costs. All of them are going to fuck up your minerals, but you have 3 costs going in right now that are going to fuck up what you're trying to do here. Number 1 is your gas. You are not stopping gas mining, which means that you cannot afford. This is one of the 3 reasons, or one of the things out of the 3 that makes your minerals not able to be spent properly. So gas being still mined is one of them, and it makes sense though because you're doing B2GM. But the fact that you're still mining gas is going to be one of the 3 costs. Number 2 is the fact that you're taking a really fucking fast third base. That's another thing that's a huge investment of your minerals right away. And number 3 is the fact that you're double injecting your hatcheries, which is another thing that's huge right away because that's another investment of resources that you're gonna have to like spend to make it work properly. So, saying that's now you're dipping your resources down by mining gas, too much minerals being spent on another hatchery, and also extra larvae being made that you need to spend. And what I'm saying now is the way to fix this would be you just eliminate one of those 3 costs. If you take a third base really fast, one of these things has to change. And if you take 2 of them, like let's say you change 2 of them, that's even better. But at least one of these has to change. And what you could do instead would be something like this. instead of taking a layer this fast, and instead of taking a double inject this fast, because you chose to go for a third, because let's say you analyzed, oh, no aggression, I can take a third really quickly. I'm okay with that, honestly, because now, if you know you're not going to be aggressively attacked, if you knew that, if you're like, okay, yeah, there's not like a scary looking timing coming my way, simply for the fact that he took a natural or some shit like that. That's one way you could read it.
Yeah,
But you
that's
could,
why I did it.
yeah, it's okay. But imagine now if you maybe delayed your layer a little bit longer, and you prioritize spinning your larva. Because look at your larva. Like the fact that you have a layer going up and you have 3 larvae sitting there, I don't like that at all. And again, also, I think the Reaper could be a part of this too, but I'm also telling you that you physically can't afford this. And your larva is going to get really ridiculous here pretty soon. So
Yeah.
if you delay your layer just for a little bit, that's a great way to spin your larva first, and then once you have no larva, then you make the layer. Another thing is if you spread creep from your natural to your third, and the reason why that's important is because it allows you, like if you made a tumor at your natural instead now, as instead of double inject, because it allows you to utilize a creep spread cooldown, which is free, and it costs no minerals to do that, but it like it also will throttle your larva a little more so that you can spin it at a realistic rate, and you're not going to have no creep and a bunch of larvae, because again you can't really afford to spin there's no fucking way you could make all this larva with the cost of the third, the layer, and the gas this early, and then also somehow squeeze out a Roachborn and a Evo Chamber and get upgrades, and then make a third queen as well. Like you can't. There's all these costs that are. It's physically not possible to do them now. All of them.
Right.
So you have to cut costs somewhere. And larva, but the one thing that no matter what build you do, it doesn't have to always be the same. But as long as you prioritize your larva, like spinning your larva, it makes sense. And the reason why it would make sense to spread a creep tumor now instead of doing a larva inject at your natural is because it would protect your larva at your third more, which is more larva then as well.
Okay.
So
Yeah, I very rarely do this, but when I do, I always feel like you said, I have no creep and I have no money
yeah,
until I get the third saturated.
yeah, it's because you have way too many costs right now. Like
Right.
that third is fucking your costs up really badly.
Yeah.
So like right now, it should be happening. This is what should be happening. Okay, you like for you to be like, I would say for you to play it perfectly. Number one, you should throw a tumor down at your natural and inject in your main, and you should spin your larva. Now let's stop. Just spin your larva. The next thing you should do is start a queen at your natural, and then you should start a layer in your main, and then still spin all your larva, and then from that point on, you can start injecting your natural again after your tumor, and you'll have more drones mining at that point, so you can actually afford more shit. Then after you spend all your larva off of the natural, and after they inject, then you can make a roach horn, and then you can make your Evo chamber. So you spin a larva first, make a third queen, and then you can take a layer, and then the injects pop off, and you have a fuckload of larva again. And then you spin all that larva, and then you make a roach horn and your Evo. So it's like the same thing as you were doing before. It's just that you're delaying the tech part of it a little bit to squeeze in the third part of it a little bit. And that's the only difference you would make. It's just you didn't delay the tech part of it at all, and you added in a third as well. So now everything is going to be like all out of order. It's going to be all fucked with your larva. Or like your roach wood's going to be super late. One of the others, your queen's going to be super late.
Yeah. I think the queen is crazy late here.
So right now, look at the larva again. You have 3 sitting there. You're actually supply blocked. And I also think part of this is because of the Reaper. And the Reaper really doesn't matter at all. Like you can see, you could have literally not microed that against that one bit, and you would have been fine anyways. The Reaper was definitely irrelevant. But yeah, getting your larva, getting an Overlord made and making sure you weren't supply blocking, like, and just continuing the larva to be flowing. That's always the most important part. I mean, like, you are still making the larva at least before you make the roachborn, which I like a lot. And you're keeping the larva spit still for now, and you just double overlorded, which I would have agreed with at that point in time to do that. But so now, like, you can see your layer is done. and you haven't even started the Roach Horn yet, which just means that this layer, there's no need for it to be made this fast. And if we look at your build, so I'll say this, you did prioritize larva still. I'm proud of you for that. That's good. But you prioritized a layer, and you did not prioritize a Roach Horn, which, again, I think it went the way. I think you did it the correct way. It's just that.
You know why, Chihuahua.
Yo, Larissa, thank you very much for the dono. I appreciate it. Thank you, thank you. Much love. Chihuahua. But what I'm saying about your layer thing though is, like the fact that the layer is done already means that this cost was huge early on, and there was no need to take it that early on. Like there's nothing it's gonna do right now because you haven't even started a Roach Horn yet, which means that that's the only thing that if you're gonna do B2GM style, that's the only thing that would make sense. And that's a 39-second build time as it is anyways, when a layer itself is like a 57 build time, a 57-second build time. So your layer could have been started a bit later, and you would have been fine. Like, you know what I mean? You understand it. But the fact that you made the larva as a priority while making the layer makes sense. I think your larva got kind of stacked up a little bit when you started the layer, but part of that was also because of a Reaper. But still, like your larva was not that delayed really that much, even though you took the layer. It's just that there was no point to take the layer, and your larva could have been a tiny bit more efficient. Once you could have afforded it, you could have taken the layer, and then you could have also taken the Roach Horn just after, once you could have afforded that. But the big thing is you, instead of prioritizing the layer when you did, you could have prioritized the third queen, which is huge. And if you had done that, you would actually right now have a third queen next to the third hatchery, and you could have a third inject going on right away. But now there is no third queen, and now at the very least, even if you start it right away, that's going to be like almost 40 seconds of time that goes by, where you have to wait for a queen now. And also, I don't like your wall. This is like a lazy throw down wall here. I would say just connect the Roach Horn to the top or the bottom. Either way works. Just like putting it more in the front, and then also like putting it in the front of your creep on more on the edge, and then also connecting it to the wall, and then adding the Evo chamber to it, either top or above it or below it. Just making the wall connect to it, actually creating a wall, basically forward. This is more just like open, and it's like you can drive your Hellions on the bottom or the top of it. I don't really care. Like this will do nothing for you if he actually showed up with Hellions. And you have no idea. Like you can assume he might not be going Hellions because now he's showing you 3 Marines in a bunker in front of his base. But I mean, you made this Roach Horn before he made the bunker, so this is just like a lazy wall. I feel like this just it serves no purpose. Like you could definitely just make that a little more efficient, because if it was, let's just say hypothetically, you were playing against like reactored Hellions, and let's say he's gonna go into like 4 or 6 Hellions now at this point, and when your Roach Horn's done, and because you went for the third and you prioritized that and you prioritized other shit before going, so your roaches are delayed more than they normally should be. Let's say he drives in your base with like 6 Hellions now as you're starting to build roaches, and then now it's gonna be a real pain in the ass to like defend it because your wall looks like it's all fucky. So
Yeah.
definitely just it's a simple fix against Terran specifically. But yeah, like your larva's gonna be all kind of, at your third base especially now, it's not gonna be really utilized very well. Now this is a big one, okay? I'm gonna back it up for a second, and we're looking at your shit going on. Looking at production, you have overlords popping right now. You're gonna start your Roach Horn in a second here, which is fine. But watch through the units tab. Just hit U on the keyboard and look at your larva.
Yeah.
And again, let's see exactly how it goes. So you have 4 larvae sitting there, and you started the Roach Horn and the Evo now, and then that's a huge cost.
Yeah.
And then now the larva spawns again as well, and now you have 6 larvae chilling there. And then, like, even if you were spending your larva constantly, you wouldn't be able to spend all of it as fast as possible because you have the cost of the other buildings, which is definitely slowing you down. So like this is one of those things where it's not a larva priority, and you definitely want to change that, so that like you should have just spent all your larvae, then made this Roachborn Evo Chamber as soon as you can afford it. That's like always. It's always the goal. Is always spend your larva first, and then add on top of it of whatever the hell you want to go for. Which is why the traditional B2GM build, when you go 2-base setup, is you go for like after the first inject and you spin the larva, then you make the Roachborn and Evo Chamber. Like you don't do it before. But like now, I'll say this: with larva gonna getting like now you have 8, with things like that happening, with like yeah, I know you have the 3rd base. It's nice to have a 3rd like that. But the fact that you have no 3rd queen, the fact that you have no creep, the fact that you have no injecting 3rd queen at that 3rd base, and you don't even have one started yet, and the fact that you have the you know, little things like now you're starting the Roachborn before spinning your larva. And again, the reason why I would have actually said, I wouldn't even have said, oh well, you didn't spin your larva because when you had 3 you made the Roachborn in the Evo Chamber if you didn't inject and instead you went for a creep tumor, because that wouldn't have existed. Instead you'd have creep to spread and you would only have had automated larvae spawning out of that hatchery at first. But again, if you're going to go for larva investment, you have to utilize it, and it's hard to do that with, you know, the fact that you're cutting your money so thin repeatedly in so many ways, like we talked about before. Yeah, it's creating larva problems for you now. Like it's just because you definitely don't want to larva cap your hatcheries ever, because the big reason why of that a lot of people don't really, I feel like, fully understand or fully appreciate and grasp is that it's obviously the easiest way to explain it is a waste of time. It's a literal waste of seconds. But larva generation that spawns out of the hatchery automatically and larva injecting are 2 different forms of larva generation, and they are exactly the same at how fast they do it. 3 larvae will automatically spawn out of a hatchery in the same duration it takes for a larva inject to pop off the hatchery, and they both give you 3 larvae. But the big problem though is if you ever have 3 larvae on a hatchery, it just stops generating larvae. So that's now seconds that go by that you never get back. It's basically like the same thing as like if you made a creep tumor and then you never spread it when it was ready to be spread with a cooldown for like 30 seconds or 40 seconds or whatever. Every second that goes by that you're not spreading that creep tumor is seconds your build is now falling behind where it could have been. So your build is, whenever you call larva cap like this, your build is definitely falling behind because you stop generating larvae now in multiple ways. So that's always huge. It's always the biggest like no-no for Zerg of like trying to avoid that at all costs. And then now, okay, this is a big problem too. Now, at the stage when you can actually afford your injects, like you have enough drones now to afford this, you actually go for a tumor now. So you're not spending your larvae that you have on the hatcheries, which means you're capping out, and now you're furthermore not injecting at this stage, and it's getting all fucked up now. So like that creep tumor could have been made a lot earlier when you actually had no money to spend it, but now it's just in reverse. So now your creep tumor is super delayed. This creep tumor could have been spread probably like 3 times by now, or 2 times by now, for sure. Because the creep tumor's cooldown's a little bit faster than an inject, and now you have no inject for your 3rd, nor do you have one now for your natural. So it's your larva's now gonna get super hit hard here. So far, I know I've been talking a lot, but so far, does any of this stuff we're talking about, does it seem weird or awkward or whatever? Or
No,
not make sense?
no, it's all good. The only question that I have is, I want to make sure I understand this right. We want to go full mineral saturation on the natural, spend all the larvae, and then Roachborn and Evo, right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Now, once we hit full saturation, we do all that, we build extractors. I'm having to pull off that mineral line to get gas. Is that going to slow down the build in any way, or is that how it's supposed to be done?
No, you can pull off the gas. The reason why your mineral line is getting all undersaturated now is because you've had so much larva. Like you just started 5 drones at once 2 seconds ago, and you stockpiled larva up to 8, which definitely means that your larva has kind of capped out your hatcheries a bit, which means you're missing larvae you could have had. because it could have generated more. And you could have definitely also, if you would have made your drones at a faster rate, where instead of making 5 at once, like let's say you made that first out of 5 drones when you first had 50 minerals, and made your second out of 5 drones when you had 50 minerals, and your third 5 out of those 5 when you had 50 minerals. So like your drones would be spawning once every like 6 or 8 seconds. Like, and the first one would have been made like maybe 30 seconds ago, and then 24 seconds ago, and then 18 seconds ago, and then 12 seconds ago. You know what I mean? Like you would have, and then all those seconds that go by when your drones are actually active is 1 mineral per second that those drones are also mining, so it gives you more money to work with. So if you had done something like that, you could actually have ripped off your mineral line to take your gases when you take your... Because the way the build should go is like this. Just instead of explaining what you could do with yours, this is how it should go. And this is even including that you have a third base. That's fine. It's just that you spend your larva, and when your first inject pops off your hatcheries, when the first round of larva pops off, especially if you double injected like the way you did this game, you spend all that larva first, and then you take your roach warren and your evo and your double gas at the same time. You build all 4 of those buildings at the same time.
Okay.
And then you're still cranking larva right, like you go immediately back into making larva and into drones again and overlords right after you make all those costs of your buildings, because the second you spend all your larva and now you have a moment where your money is starting to go up again and you have no larva to spend, building the roach warren, evo chamber, and double gas is not free. It's not instant. It actually takes you 275 minerals on top of what you have already done. Like, you know, like just those 4 buildings together all cost 275. And then that's not only going to cost 275, but that's also going to take 4 drones off of your mineral line. So that's going to make your money generate a little bit slower while also spending a lot of money. So your larva will definitely start to stack up again as this happens. Yeah. And then immediately you go back to spending that larva again the second you make all these buildings. And if you do that, you'll be totally fine to saturate your natural mineral line really fast while also getting gas appropriately when you need it.
Okay, cool.
Alright, so thank you guys for the subs. Much love. I appreciate the support, guys. Thank you. Appreciate you. Now we have spores going down, and I'm gonna ask you about this. When you scouted through his base with an overseer, and we'll look at you. Actually, I'm gonna go back to the exact scout that you did, and then we'll talk about it. So I'm looking at your overseer. It's kind of chilling. Speed it up a little bit, tell when it moves. Okay, now it's moving. And we see a starport floating, a factory floating. They're swapping add-ons. He's got a barracks with a tech lab. And he's got marines and overlord. And overseer dies. Now, your reaction to this was to build Spore at main and natural. And now I want you to, for a second, walk me through what you think here, and what you think you saw when you scouted, and why what your reaction was what it was.
I just see Starport. I know I don't have Hydras out yet, so if Liberators show up, I know he doesn't have a fusion core, so no BCs or anything like that. But if Liberators show up, I don't have enough Queens out to defend.
Okay, so I'll say the spores at all were not necessary. Okay. And the reason why is because if he did make Liberator, like the fact that he was swapping that starport right now means that even if he was going to make Liberators it's still at the very least about a full minute out, because the Liberator's build time itself is like 40 seconds or something. Like we can look at exactly what it is. The Liberator's build time is 43 seconds. And then the flight time from going out of that starport where it is right now all the way to your base it can't go directly to your base either. It would probably have to go like maybe a little bit of a detour around the side of the map, because most of the time for it to be effective it's going to go from like the back of the mineral line, not the front of it. So the flight time for Liberator is probably going to be like 25 seconds. So 43-second build time and like a 25-second travel time. So we're looking at like about a minute and 8 seconds, minute 10 seconds, something around there for it to just attack you. Which is enough time for you, if you thought about it like you wanted to make more queens, you could make 6 queens easily in that amount of time if you wanted to make 3 queens per hatchery. If you like, I'm not saying that's the correct response either. I'm just saying you could do that because you scouted it as the starport was in the middle of air, like it was flying, and you know that it was being added onto a reactor because you had scouted that as well. Now, I will also say, seeing that his composition was Marines, and also seeing that he had a barracks with a tech lab add-on that was being upgraded, it's very unlikely that it's going to be Liberators. Because if it was Liberators, it's also even furthermore not scary for the sense that, like, if he makes Liberators, he really can't push you with these Marines. So, like, the fact that he's going to get Stimpack, the fact that he's going to do all this stuff, and he makes Liberator, it means that his bio has no support literally at all. Like, if it just walks across the map and gets hit by Speedlings, like, he doesn't know what you're doing exactly either. So if you were to go Speedlings, you could just run his ass over. He can't evacuate. If you have Roaches, he also can't stabilize his Marines at all either with Stim and, like, heal through the Roach damage. He would just get overrun by... Like, Marines without medevac support are actually completely garbage. They're so fucking bad. So as soon as Zerg starts getting, like, tech and, like, mobility, like, if you get Roach speed, you get Roach upgrades, Marines without medevac support are fucking awful. So it's very unlikely that he's going to be going for Liberator again. Like, he might make Liberators later to further, like, push you with other stuff, but it makes the most sense that he's going to open medevac, because otherwise his Marines can't do shit, and his build is very much he's doing his version of a 2-1-1. But yeah, like, you saw, like, the fact that you saw like 8 Marines kill your Overseer, that definitely shows you that he's got a Marine focus. So medevac is most likely what he's going to make. And now the final thing I'll say is the fact that if you would have made 1 spore per, even just 1 spore per base, I would have been like, not the worst. Still not necessary, but not the worst. The fact that you're making 2 spores per base, shit like this, is again massive at how much it fucks your economy up. Because you just deleted. You have look at this. You have 7 larvae. You have no queen at your 3rd. Still, you're finally now starting another queen at your natural. But you have 7 larvae. You have the cost of 4 drones that have now been deleted, and you have the cost of 4 spores, which is 300 minerals again. So you're 4 drones down, which is another 200 minerals that you just kind of threw away to make spores out of them, and then because you have to remake them again, and then the 300 minerals of having the cost of 4 spores. That's a lot of money that could have been spent, and if you would have spent those 300 minerals instead on your current larva, you could have spent 6 out of 7 of that. So you could have had a 16 out of 16 mineral line on your main and natural, and had 6 drones being made for your 3rd. Like, automatically, like, right away. That would have been huge. That would have turned your drone count, instead of being 37, it would have turned your drone count into 47. Because you could have made 6 drones plus 4 of the ones that you just wasted on spores. So that's, that's 10 more drones right there. That's huge. And that would have definitely given you an edge there in the economy department. Like, even at this point in the game, when I don't even think up to this point it was perfect. But making double spores like this, I would say, wouldn't even be appropriate versus even, like, if you saw a tech lab on that starport, where it could be like Banshee or BC. And the reason why that is because I would say a better response to it would definitely be, if it was tech lab, I'd be like, yeah, you could totally just make queens and make 1 spore per mineral line, and then you'd be fine. Like, there's the double spore is just so excessive. Like the only time I would ever say double spore would make sense is if you physically saw like a double starport tech lab battlecruiser opener, where it's like, oh fuck, he's got a fusion core started, and he's got 2 starports, like with double tech labs. Okay, this dude is definitely committed to air. Then I'd be like, all right, yeah, like double spore per base makes sense. You're gonna be dealing with like a fuckload of BCs probably, so that's fine. And then you could go double spore and queens until you get like hydras or whatever, and that would be fine. But yeah, this double spore is like, it's so much more expensive than I think that when you did this, then you realize. It's ridiculous. It's insane. So and then the last thing I'll say is thinking about your fear of Liberator. Okay. The last thing would be even if you made 1 spore per mineral line, which again I think is an excessive response to this. But if you did it, it would have been less impactful because I imagine you're also going to make 2 spores at your third, as well. But imagine if you had a Liberator show up, and you're like, oh fuck, it's Liberators, it's annoying. I'm gonna send whatever queen I can at the side of them to avoid the queens dying, but at the same time also poke the Liberator and get it away. But you could just take if like 2 Liberators showed up at the back of your natural, and they were in awkward spots where they were covering themselves from your queens to hit them, but they were also kind of shoving your drones off the mineral line. Just move off the mineral line for a second, uproot that spore, reroute that spore forward where the Liberator is, and you'll kill it. Like you'll make him unsiege and leave. Just the 1 spore. And then, you know, that would be problem solved basically there. If it were to be a Liberator. Yeah, like all I can say, the big one, is the fact that right now in economy tab, you have 37 to his 34 drones. This all comes from inefficiency of Zerg. At this point in time, you should have like 50 drones. Seriously, like you should have roughly about 50 drones right now. You should at the very least have 44 and roaches being made, and then getting ready to make more drones with B2GM style. So like what I would say is, the fact that you went for a third base really fast is definitely a greedy response, and you did it blindly as well, as we talked about earlier. But it worked out because his build actually couldn't really punish you for what you did because he wasn't even producing out of his barracks for a while, and he also went for a natural. But if you would have just done a standard B2GM opener where it was like the one that I've shown where it's 2 base, 2 base, 2 base, you make roaches and then take a third with the roaches, you would have been further ahead than you are now as well. Just because your build is like sometimes whenever people do shit like this where they take a third really fast, it starts making you feel even more exposed because you have more of the map to defend now. Like you're just more spread out, and you know sometimes that makes people be like, well fuck, I could die. I could. There's more ways I can take damage, so I got to be safer now. And if you play like that, it definitely slows everything down for you hardcore. Yeah. All right, but yeah, you're definitely falling behind, unfortunately, because you're actually like basically tied with him in supply and also almost tied with him in workers, which is definitely should not be happening. At this point, again, you should have had like 50 plus drones, and your supply should be like, if he's at like 58 right now, your supply should be like 80, like 75 to 80. Alright, so we're going to see how many units you make now. And you're over making roaches though, I would say. A little bit. We'll see if you keep going beyond this. You made 11. I would say 8 to 10 is ideal. 11, I'm not gonna, this is like the least inefficient thing you've done so far this game. I do think you overmade roaches by 1. And that's like almost irrelevant. But it's again, it's a little thing. It's a little tiny thing. But out of everything you've done up to this point, this is the littlest, least inefficient thing you've done. Because this is also happening at a later stage of the game, which almost has no impact. It's very little impact on your economy. And I do like that you're going back into drones now. But if we're talking about little things that become inefficient over and over and over, the more of these things you make, the more fucked your build becomes. So the goal for you always, my opinion, should be go for anywhere between 8 to 10 roaches just to be safe, and then immediately go back into saturating your third. And if you can just get that third base saturated as fast as possible, you then can go back into making army off of a good economy, and you never have to stop making army then. But if you do little things that are inefficient, it slows down how fast you saturate your third, and it makes you more vulnerable because now it takes longer to get to that stage where you now just start slamming roaches out. So your third base ideally should be saturated, fully saturated by like 6:15. Okay, we're gonna say 6:15, with the fact that you have yeah, you're making safety roaches. So like 615 would be like an ideal saturation there. And we'll see how long it takes you to do this. To go back into roach phase. Alright, and then your creep is not spreading at all during this process either. This is something you definitely should be working on a bit more. And now your drones are getting hit in the main. And okay, so this was definitely painful for you, and we'll say this, okay? Just before we resume this, we'll talk about a couple ways you can fix this to make your life much easier. Number one, get in the habit of scouting with creep, and like every time you every time you inject your hatcheries and shit like that, try to, like, either if you go for the 2-base build where your third queen is the one who injects, or if you go for the build you did this game where you go for a really fast third and now you make a tumor first, I would say make your life easy. Maybe just go for one build for now. Like, just do the 2-base build and make your life just super easy, just to make it repetitive. But my point I'm trying to make here is you're gonna you should have a creep tumor down no matter what, whether it's a 2-base version or a 3-base version. It's just that the 3-base version is you make a tumor first out of your natural and then you start injecting. With the 2-base version, you make a queen out of your natural right away after your first queen's done. So you make a third queen, and that queen becomes the creep spreader until your 3rd base is done. So either way, you're gonna have a tumor early in the game, and you should be spreading creep every time you inject. And you definitely didn't do it this game. You have 2 tumors, and only 1 has spread once. So that's definitely not enough. And because you're 6 minutes in. At 6 minutes in, if we really calculate how much time has gone by, your first 2 queens were out, and they cast both their spell at like just after like 2 minutes, like 2:30. So we'll just see this really fast. Okay, we'll just do a quick number here. Your first queen spawns at 2:40, and you could have thrown let's just say you threw a tumor down right now. The tumor itself has a cooldown of like 21 seconds. I'm pretty sure. I'm gonna look at when you make yours just to be 100% sure here. Okay, it's like a 21-second cooldown. I'm pretty sure. So like hold on. The tumor, the build time of a tumor is 11 seconds, and then the cooldown of the tumor after it's done to build another one is about 11 seconds. It's like 11. So because you have to wait for it to build, and then once it's built, you have to then wait for the cooldown. So yeah, it's like a 22-second build time overall to start another creep tumor, which is a little bit faster than an inject, but we'll just say 22 seconds per tumor, and you could have started your first one at 2:40. So if we think about how many tumors you could have thrown down between 2 minutes 40 and 6 minutes, just off one tumor, how many times could that have spread? That one tumor could have spread, what is that? It's like, that's probably like, I would say on average, like if you had to estimate it, probably like 9 tumors. Because you'd have like roughly about the chance to make 9. You'd be like waiting in the cooldown to make your 10th tumor right there. There's a fuckload of tumors just to make off of one tumor. If you were playing like, super efficient from that point on. And if you had 9 tumors on the map, not only could you have your 3rd base connected to your natural, you could have creep like all the way out to like right here on the mini map, like way up here. If you just made the tumor go from your natural to your 3rd and then up that ramp outside of your 3rd or some shit like that, it could have been like pretty far out just from one tumor. And then if you actually had that, like, a 3rd queen making tumors as well, like a couple more, you could have had a pretty decent net of creep. Like about I would say your net of creep could look like this, like out in front of your base, like about like that far out. Like you could have a very good vision net of around your base by like 6 minutes. Like just with having like a queen dedicated to it and having like maybe 4 active tumors and spreading all of them as much as you can. Because if you could have made 9 with your first one, your second one could probably make like 7, your 3rd one could make like 5, and your last one could make like 3 tumors by that point. And you could be starting like a 5th tumor. So creep spread is definitely something that I would definitely want you to work on, just in general. And then another thing you can work on is when you make overlords. Okay, don't just make an overlord and then just forget about it. Don't be like 5S overlord and then just let it be, and have it go to your rally point of your hatcheries. What you should do is every time you make an overlord, be like 1S overlord, and then just right click all of your larvae and the 1 egg you made to a place on the map. And I'm gonna let the game go for a second and get rid of my pings so it's not so confusing. So your first overlord, you could be like, your first and second overlord could go to his base the way you did. That's fine. But then your third overlord could like sit where your third is right here in front of your base. That's totally fine. Just before you have creep, it just gives you vision to see, am I getting attacked at all before I'm ready for it? Once you have creep, it doesn't need to be there anymore. But for now, before you had creep, you could leave it there. That's fine. But like your next overlord you make, right click it there. Just make the larva go 5S, and let's say you have 4 larvae and you make 1 overlord. You could have 3 larvae selected and the overlord 1 egg selected. It'll prioritize the egg, and it won't do shit to the larva. The larva can't respond to move commands. It won't do anything to it. Even if you move command it, it doesn't like make that larva have a rally to go there with your next unit you make either. It does literally nothing. Like larva just ignores it. So you right click there. The next overlord you make, you right click there. The next overlord you make, you right click there. The next one you make, you right click there. The next one you make, you right click there. The next one you make, you right click there. The next one there. And then the next one there. And then the next one there. And the next one there. You just look at, and then maybe like there's one like there you can put it. Basically the point is all these pings have one thing in common, and that is that it's open air spots that cannot be killed unless it's by like a Viking. And it's the edges of the map, which is very commonly abused by Protosses and Terrans. Protosses often send either a prism or like an oracle over these kinds of places, and Terrans always send medevacs over these places. So if you have creep spread covering the middle of the map and you have overlords covering the sides of the map, now suddenly you can see shit like what just happened to you where a drop just shows up in your base, because you definitely had enough. You had like 7 overlords in this spot right here behind your mineral line at your natural. There were like 7 overlords that were just chilling, or 8 overlords by the time you got dropped, which those could have potentially spotted the medevacs for you. Because if we speed it up now, let's just watch it on like ×8 really fast to watch his drop. How does it go? Like what angle does his drop stay? And you're the overlord that died as well. Here's another thing too. The overlord that died on the cliff, you physically saw the medevacs, and like you knew he was going Marines not only because of the overseer scout you had earlier. You scouted a 2-1-1 opener with your overseer scout when it flew through his base because you saw a Stimpact upgrading tech lab on the barracks. You saw a reactored barracks on the other one. And then you saw a reactored starport, which means he's going to be making Marine, medevac. But then you just confirmed it again with the overlord just right now that just died. And you saw, okay, 2 medevacs that are sitting there and like 16 Marines that just killed my overlord. And now he loads up. So that what's that, you know, obviously you should be more like aware, being like, okay, he's going to probably drop me, which is fine. There's nothing to freak out about. It's just that like now you're going to need to get ready to send your roaches to the right spot, because it makes sense. Because he's doing a pressure. He's now going to do a harassment Marine drop to you that you've confirmed and scouted. So now how does he move his medevacs? He goes to the very bottom of the map. So if you had overlords like we talked about in those locations, you would be seeing him cross 2 overlords, because you could have had an overlord there and an overlord there. And you'd be like, oh, he's crossing this one right here. And now he's crossing this one right here. And in the time he crossed the first overlord, your roaches where they are right now could be moved towards your main base. And by the time he crossed your second overlord, it's still showing you where he is. And then your roaches could greet him on the cliffside as he starts dropping in your base. And it's not because you're playing like a fucking genius where you're like, I'm just predicting what this guy's doing. It's more like, you know, you're just like, well, he showed me he killed my overlord, and he showed me I've seen what build he's going for, so it's kind of standard. It's like kind of expected that he's going to go for a drop, and now I'm confirming it repeatedly with little setups that I've done where it's like I have little vision scouts, and like there's nothing he can do about those overlords. He can't land the overlord on that very bottom middle part of the map where it's like the low ground part that is unlandable. You can't land Marines there, so they physically can't die. The only place you can land Marines on this map would be right around the upper tier cliff sides where the minerals are, where they are right now. He could land right now, where his medevacs are right this second. But if your overlord was like to the right of that in the open airspace, where it looks like it's overground, but it's really not, like right now, he can't land there. That's unlandable. That's not actual terrain. It might seem confusing to players that are like, wait, what? I bet someone who's new to StarCraft, or like someone who doesn't know that, you cannot fucking, like, no one can land here. Like, you can, no race can use this terrain. It's actually,
Yeah, you can't leave the map.
yeah, like it's even though it looks like it is part of the map, this is actually unlandable terrain. It's weird. So this is just one of those things where it's a little more confusing for people, I guess, who are newer to the game. I never really thought about that, about people thinking about the game that way. But yeah, you can't actually land here. It would be broken as fuck if you could, because the reason why is because if you could do that, imagine, like the mineral line that's above it, imagine if this was full of siege tanks, and then these medevacs just go to the right where those, like the like right here, for instance, and they land right there on the other side of those weird looking rocks, and they just shoot the mineral line with siege tanks. That'd be broken as fuck. Super abusable, and that would be just, it would make this map absolutely stupid. So yeah, that kind of shit doesn't, it's not viable. It's not allowed. Yeah. So anyways, your overlords would be, the point is your overlords could not die here, unless it was to a Viking, and he obviously didn't make a Viking, so you would just see this and you could zone him out. But letting all of the things that have happened up to this point, I'm gonna stop it right when he's about to kill your drones. Right now. We're gonna really quickly take a look at income tab. So he has 36, you have 50. You're definitely, I would say your build for itself is a little bit behind where it could be. You could be at the point you're at right now about a full minute ago. And again, you're not there because of all the inefficiencies that have happened. Your larva, your triple cost thing we talked about at the very beginning. Your spores, that's a huge one. That is actually one of the biggest things that you've done. The two biggest things you've done that have fucked up your economy really hard is you didn't figure out a way to have the triple cost not fuck you, because you didn't actually prioritize larva in that stage while you had all those costs. So you had like this moments where it's like, oh, I have 6 larva, now I have 8 larva, now I have 5 larva again, and like having larva ever stack up to like those degrees are it's crazy. It sucks for you really bad. It should be, your larva should be disappearing immediately every time. You should always be 0 as much as possible. So that sucked. And then the spore color thing that you did like right after for like your reaction of what you scouted, that was huge too. Like those two things definitely are, I would say if you're behind by a minute, those two things are the reason why 40 seconds of that exists, or like 45 seconds of that exists. The other little bits of like the 15 seconds remaining, if we're talking, if those two things cost you 45 seconds of your build, the last 15 seconds would be like things like you didn't have an inject going on your third for a very long time, and you missed out on some larva there because you never made a third queen for the longest time. And the moments when, instead of having like the, you know, the 8 larvae on your hatcheries and the 6 larvae on your hatcheries and the 5 larvae, maybe having only 2 larvae sitting on one hatchery at a time. That's, you know, like it could have been like, instead of making 2 drones at once and you missed the first larva for 11 seconds or 12 seconds, you could have made 1 by 1 by 1 by 1, and it's the more minor ones would be like the last like 15 seconds that you're missing, and like the 1 roach extra, stuff like that, would be the other reason for the makeup the rest of why you're behind. But now, so your build's still ahead of his, I would say, a little bit. It's not way ahead. You're a little bit ahead. You definitely have a comfortable drone count to his SCV count, and when you compare. But with this, what's about to happening, you're definitely behind after this. Like, this is way too many drones that died. So he just set your drone count back to equalizing stages, which is awful for you because of 2 reasons. Okay, this is even bigger. I just looked at your production tab. Number 1 is obviously losing your drones like this sucks ass, because now that's a lot of economy you just lost and you need to replace it. But you're also not replacing it. You're making roaches again. So this is one of those moments where it's just a overcompensation for what is capable out of your Terran opponent. You just have to realize that the reason why I told everybody in Bronze to GM to make 8 to 10 roaches and then saturate 3 bases and then go back into making units is because 8 to 10 roaches can handle everything at that stage of the game if your opponent is not 1 base all-inning you. And the odds of you getting 1 base all-in are very low. And you would have also realized you're getting 1 base all-in a long time ago because you would have saw no natural at all. So the game would have been totally different. If you would have saw no natural and like, you know, those stuff like that, you would have probably have been all-in during the moment you were making 2 base roaches. Like it's more likely like that would have been the case. Like he would have been all-inning you, not just harassing you. So this is harassment. This is not all-in. The only reason why I would have wanted you, or I would have said it would have made sense to make roaches here, 7 roaches, would have been if this was an all-in. And the difference between a harassment and an all-in is this. Harassment is designed to kill your drones. All-in is designed to kill your army. So what did he just do? He killed your drones. And what happened to as soon as he fought your army? He ran away. So the fact that you're making a response to this by making army literally just wastes your larva and goes, well, I'm not going to remake drones now. Even though, how many just died? Like 15 or something? 12 just died. 12 just died and you're not remaking them. Because you're making roaches. So you reacted to this like if it was an all-in, and you took a fuckload of damage from it when it was a harassment. So this is a double deficit for you. Like it's just putting you into a hole you're not going to be able to recover out of. So you have to be able to analyze that and recognize what it is. And the way you can easily do that is looking at expansions. And did you see a 3rd base especially from... Oh, so you didn't. Okay, you did not see a 3rd base from Terran, which would have made it really obvious. But I'll just say this. If a Terran ever does an attack that is... basically, like...
Oh,
we're talking, like...
yeah.
If the Terran has, like, multiple bases, and he has... Okay, I want to say this in a way that's not going to be confusing. Going back to, like, just click on one of your buildings and hold V, so you can... It goes to your vision, so you can look at his base according to what you saw, or you can just click your vision itself, like hit 1 on the replay here, so you can see just your perspective of vision, and you see racks, factory, starport, racks, and then you just saw the bunker and stuff like that. So up to this point, did you ever think during this game you were going to get all in? Did you ever feel like that was happening?
No, not until the drop.
Okay,
But even at the drop, I didn't feel like it was all in.
yeah. So again, that would just to make sure you really understand that the roach response you made here would have been correct if it was all in. But if it's not, it's incorrect. So, I mean, I'm glad that you feel like it's not. You can recognize at this stage of the game that's not an all in because it definitely isn't. But just from now on, never make roaches against harass, because if you have enough roaches, which you easily do, to deal with it, you don't need to worry about making more. Because the goal you should have here, you should always have this goal, and it's how can I get to 3 base saturation as fast as possible and then make units. And every time you deviate from that, you're falling behind. So you definitely should be like, well, I have enough units to guard myself from harassment. If he does harass me, I'll be fine, which you were. You definitely were, because he's already running away before your roaches even spawn, the new ones. And then if you would have, you know, ideally made drones instead, you would have 10 drones in production, and you would be recovering a lot faster. And then the last thing would be, if you had overlords in position, and let's just say you actually didn't react with your roaches right away, but let's just say you could have pulled your drones for a second, that also would have been great. But even if you don't pull your drones, you still would have been fine. You still would have been fine. Like, I'm not telling you you're playing perfect in every way, other than the fact that you made roaches. Like, you definitely could spin your larva faster. You definitely could, you know, spin your creep faster. You could definitely have more scouting going on. All these things. But even if you lost 12 drones and you just remade drones only, that still would have been all right. Like, if I was the one doing the B2GM series and I was in Plat, that's probably what I would have done. I probably would have just let the drones fucking die and then just made drones in the process, because I could have recovered. Like, basically, I would have lost it and remade it as it died. And if this guy committed to something like that, and let's look at his build. Look at production tab right now. Hit D, and look at what he's doing, or what he's not doing. If he kills drones and I instantly remake drones, I recover immediately, and I'm still making drones. He's not making SCVs because he's attacking you. This is what everyone fucking does in leagues like Platinum and everything below that, even in Diamond sometimes. But in Platinum especially, Nobody fucking macros while they harass. So if my opponent harasses me, and even if I take a little bit of damage here and there, but I focus on the recovery aspect and get to that point where I explode with units because I have a good saturation, I will crush because he doesn't make SCVs over and over and over and over and over. Like, this is unacceptable as well for the Terran that at 6.5 minutes, both of his mineral lines are still not fully saturated. And there's, like, again, he's not making SCVs out of the natural. There we go, now he just starts going. But yeah, like, it's just, people do that kind of shit all the time. Now anyways, going back to your build. Your setup here. Where you have your army located is definitely risky, I would say. Because again, you have no vision. If he dropped you again another time in your main base, you'd get fucked again. This would be very risky. So I would say never leave your creep like this, ever. Like, you don't really have any intentions to attack him right now. There's no point to be out here. So it's pretty risky what you're doing. Alright, and then your economy is also very delayed for, like, again, multiple reasons, again, now with the fact that you lost drones and then you remade drones. Okay, so that's a perfect reason right there. So you just engaged the Roach Ravager. This was off creep, and it was also next to a vision blocker.
Yeah.
Which doesn't need to happen as well. So like you can see, your army's attacking half of his army. Like the other, like he's got units in range of you as well that are just shooting you for free in the bushes. And then on top of that, you're fighting him as well, further out of your base. So it's basically like you're engaging him because what's your drone count at? Your drone count's still not done yet. This is like unacceptable. Well, I'm gonna make you a build here in a sec, and this is like unacceptable how long it's taking you to saturate because you're still not at the power phase at almost 8 minutes, which means that this timing is gonna be scarier and scarier and scarier and scarier. And it's simply I could say the word macro, but it's because it's taking you so long to get to that economy stage that's good that you're still waiting and waiting and waiting on the Roach stage to go back into that. And your supply right now at 740, we'll just go to it exactly, at 740 could honestly be like 150 easily, even a plat. If you just, you know, didn't have inefficiencies throughout your build the whole way up.
I feel like, because I actually queued into this guy right after, and I didn't take the third, and I think it went much better because I did focus on saturation and like spinning the larva and stuff.
Yeah. Well, that's what I mean.
Think,
like, keep going, keep talking.
Yeah, like you were saying, just like cutting the costs, and then the spores are just. I don't think I really realized just how big the second spore, really, or the third and fourth spore technically, really are.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's a lot, and also, I would say making spores is really not, it's not really necessary versus someone who goes reactor starport. The chances of him opening up a Liberator are very, very low.
Yeah.
And like, I would say more like this: if you play against people who go spores later on in the game and you're like, oh fucking like Liberator's just annoying, dude, I hate them, and like it happens always like around like 15 minutes there's always a fucking Liberator in my base somewhere. Like this guy just always has Liberators like poking my bases and stuff like that. I would not mind if you got to 80 drones saturation and then you made a spore per base, even if you didn't need them, but you were like, you know what, I just like them, it just makes me feel more safe. I'd be like, that's fine, you're at 80 drones, you can afford it, it barely does anything to you, like it barely affects you at all, like it doesn't matter. Then the cost of spores then is not that bad because you have like 80 drones to recover off of, which is like immediately, it's not a big deal. But you actually made spores in your game before you could even spend your larva to replace the drones you spent the spores on. Like you had enough money to barely spend your larva, and then you incorporated a 300 mineral spore cost. So now your larva stacks really hard, and you can't spend it at all, and you wait on it and wait on it and wait on it, and shit like that
Right.
is what's going to definitely slow your build down a lot. So I definitely see you dying right here at this point. He's going to kill a bunch more of your drones. You have nothing to defend yourself. And now you're now turning into a situation where you're a 2-base Zerg fighting a 3-base Terran, because he did just take his third, and now it's your chances of you coming out of this ahead are non-existent, really. Luckily for you though, he didn't kill your third. He just killed some drones and ran away, so you could recover. You could recover, but now this is getting to that point to where now it's getting a little fucky. We're getting out of the stage of the game where it's harass based, because now you guys are both ramping up to a point where you should have high supplies, because the game is long enough to get to that point. And like Terran can make SCVs and units at the same time, shit like that. So now it's no longer the phase of is it harass or is it all in. Even though he played that like a harass because he killed your drones and ran away. He also killed your army at first when you fought in the middle of nowhere. But he played that attack like he just did, like a harassment, because he backed off after he killed your drones. But now, again, it's getting to the point where it doesn't matter what it is, because it's so late that it always could be considered what is equivalent to like all in, because he's always going to have armies now that could literally fucking kill you. So if you've gotten to this point in the game where it's now this late and your drones die this much, you'd have to kind of go back to the drawing board and be like, well, how can I prevent myself from getting in this situation? Like there's very few things you can do at this stage to just outplay him now. Like he would have to become a better player at this stage to be like, well, I'm just way better than the Terran, and I can out micro him, I can outsmart him, I can do all these things better than him. But getting in this position now is definitely like avoid what you want to avoid. This is now the fucked up position for Zerg to be like, well, I'm way down on drones. It's not feeling good. Like I'm negative 42 drones to his 47 SCVs, and he has triple orbital commands, which is definitely not good for you. And you're like, okay, well, do I want to make army or drones? If I make drones, I'm probably just going to die. And if I make army, like, I'm going to be in this low economy situation forever. It's going to be hard, because if I have no drones to make army with, I'm always going to have similar supplies to the Terran, or maybe even less supply than the Terran, when his army is better than mine. Because he has, like, tanks and medevacs, and I just have Roach Hydra. Like, tank medevac is way fucking better than Roach Hydra. It scales way better. Roach Hydra scales awful in terms of, like, quality, but it can build so fast if you get a good economy. So what should be happening is Terran's at 100 supply, you're at 150. Terran's at 120 supply, you're at 190, 200. Like, you should be always outnumbering his supply like crazy. That's what should be happening. And yeah, like it's obviously not happening for all the reasons we talked about up to this point. And like looking at production, you made another round of roaches, and then now you go back to drones. He comes back again with another round of units, and he's pulling you into tanks. And now I imagine you're gonna go back into making units, which you are. You're getting bullied now, and you're just gonna die over time. There's nothing you can do about it. And yeah, I mean, game is over. You're gonna die, and then what I can do for you now, just to give you something quick here. We are going kind of deep on coaching here, but let's, if you want to, I don't mind doing this. I can just give you one more build here, again, another example build, and you already have examples of 2-base builds, but if you'd like, I can give you an example of a 3-base build.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Okay. But you should already have a lot of examples from just like the replays in B2GM. I would literally do the exact same thing from that. So okay, I'm gonna leave the group. Or perfect.
Made you later.
You got it. You got it. Alright, so this will be a 3-base response. Like, it's basically going to be what your build should have looked like if you would have gone 3 bases. Alright. And then again, feel free, as always, to ask questions, whatever you want to talk about during the game. But I'm going to take you to max. I'll just literally hit max supply, then we'll end it there. And this will be like your... so if you do 3-base, it should be faster than 2-base. And your build is actually slower than 2-base. Because your build's greedier if you go 3-base. And but it's just learning how to optimize how to be greedy. Okay. So we're making drones, all that stuff. And everything up to the initial part is going to be the same. We'll just take a third as a reaction, like kind of what you would have done if you would have scouted the barracks properly, and then that would have been an okay. Honestly, I would have agreed with your reaction if you would have scouted the barracks like we talked about in the beginning of the coaching lesson.
So, little off topic, but just a general question. How do you know, like, what drone count you need to do or need to have to do certain things? So, like, I know 66 drones, you can max out on Roach Hydra and ZvT. But if I wanted to go, like, Roach Hydra, I want 12 Lurkers, or I want 10 Brood Lords in my army. How do I know what drone counts I need to reach before I can produce that?
Don't think about drone counts in terms of what army composition you're going to go for. Think about drone counts in terms of how aggressive your opponent's going to be. So if your opponent's going to be really aggressive on 1 base, you can be 2 base saturated. If your opponent's going to be really aggressive on 2 base, you can be 3 base saturated. If your opponent's going to be 3 base or anything above that, you can be 4 base saturated and always be there. You can always be 1 base above what their aggression is going to be. Always. And that's it. That's all it is. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense.
Okay. And then, yeah, and then once you get to that stage where you're at the 1 base above what their economy is, and they're being aggressive, and they're like, let's just say they have the intention to kill you now, you can just make units nonstop from that point on, and you'll be fine. You'll outnumber them. You'll always outproduce them if you know, especially in lower leagues. And then let's just say hypothetically, I'm like, okay, cool, yeah, I'm gonna make the reaction of taking a fast third now because it's gonna make sense. So this will be the 3 base version of just like what you did. So we're gonna make a tumor out of our natural first instead because we're going for the third now, and we're gonna make another queen now. And I would say ideally I would be like, you probably want to take your drones off gas, but we're gonna make this really easy, and we're not gonna care about that. We're just gonna cut because that would be cutting a second cost. The whole 3 cost rule I talked about earlier. We're only cutting 1 cost, which is the layer for now. So we'll just let the gas ramp up for a bit. But we're still making the queen, we're still making the third, we're still spinning our larva. We're just cutting the layer cost, and we're also putting a tumor down first, so that's kind of a second cost too right there. But just no second inject. And now you can see I have 3 queens. I have all my shit spent. Now I can make my layer. Now I can do it, and I don't care.
So now do we wait for mineral saturation before we go Evo double extractor?
Yeah,
Roach Warren?
Yeah, I'm just like, oh, you can see my injects are about to pop off, and double inject popping off my hatcheries is going to cost me about 600. And then we have an overlord. I think I just made one. Yeah, there you go. And now we can spend all of that money here, and right now just a sec, and we just spent it all, and now we can make our Roach Warren and our Evo and our double gas. And now, again, I told you, you could have, with the build you did last game, you were at 50 drones at 6 minutes.
Yeah.
6 minutes. That's how long it took. And this, again, this build it paces faster than 2 base versions of it, because it's a 3 base version. So you should have more larvae to work with if you spin it properly. And now you can see at 4 minutes and 20 seconds, we're at 50 plus drones already. And then now we can make, you know, we can make our roaches, or get our roach speed, get our +1 weapons. We'll make 6 to 8 roaches. And if you look at if you think about the timer, you didn't even make roaches until you were at 50 drones. You did not make roaches until 5 minutes. We can make roaches already before 5 minutes, and we already have 5 of them in production. We'll make 10 this game because you went to 11, but we'll make the 10 to be safe, just to make it on the upper end to be safe. For that degree. Okay, so now we have 10 roaches. We're good. We go back into droning, and now at 5 minutes, we have 60 drones at 5 minutes, and already 10 roaches. So definitely, if you clean that up, you'll definitely feel fucking solid. And you can see my overlord. See all my overlords right now, and my creep.
Yeah.
I would see that drop coming too. I'd be like, oh, look at that drop. It's passing my overlords. And now and again, it's at 6 minutes. At 6 minutes, you were, where were you? You were, sorry, I said you were at 50 drones at 6 minutes, right? Or, hold on. Yeah, you were, sorry, I'm like trying to like think about what the hell I just said to you. Yeah, you were at 50 at 6 minutes, and at 6 minutes for us, we were in the 70s already. And we could like we could now be like, oh, we just killed an attack. How about we just take another base and we're fully saturated? Like everything's good to go, and we could even take our hydrogen now, you know, all this stuff like that, and be super solid. But everything is just flowing really fucking fast for us.
Yeah.
And we could even take like our second Evo chamber. We could send 4 drones up to our 4th base. And then we could like saturate all the way to like 80 drones now. And again, this could be a drone window because he just lost a big army. Like, you know, like your opponent did to you too. I'm glad that I got attacked because you actually killed Marines just like I killed Marines just now in your game. Like you killed half the medevac of Marines when he was on the ground in your main base. And now that we have good saturation, we're at the ideal saturation that we want to go for, which is like, you know, our 80 drone count, our 4 base saturation. We can now just go into hydras and roaches now. And now that we have also a decent amount of roaches, we can just start making hydras. And you got attacked in your game at, was it 8 minutes, I think? Was when you got attacked by that big timing in your 3rd base. And you were at 100 supply. Or something like that. We can see we're already at 100, yeah, we're about to be 150 supply, and it's only 717. And then our creep spread as well. Remember how we pinged it, and we were like, you could have your creep all the way up, and you know, you could have probably like 20 tumors or 15 tumors or whatever it was. We definitely have a lot of tumors right now, just chilling. And we're not doing anything crazy. All we're doing is creep spreading, and injecting, and initially making drones, and then, you know, making our army after we're at that good saturation. We're not worrying about like going crazy on scouting though. We're not worrying about going crazy on multi-prong harassing him. We're just making drones. And now we're gonna max out here in just a second. As soon as an overlord spawns, which I think I have in production. I'm pretty sure I do. We could max out right now, but we'll see when the overlord spawns. We are going to max at 822. 822 we just maxed. And
Okay. Cool.
yeah, like this wasn't even the most perfect efficient form of it either. It's just efficiency in terms of, you know, like prioritizing your larva again. That's the whole goal here. Definitely making sure your larva is a priority and not delaying it to do spores and, you know, all the things we talked about already. And then if you have, you know, if you can do this here, like that Terran shows up with his tank timing at 100 supply, and you would have had, at like the timing that would have hit you, you would have had like 150 plus, 170, something in that range if you would have done it like this right here. And suddenly that attack is like, wow, this attack is just like I run over it really fucking hard. It just dies. It's like 2 tanks or 3 tanks, like 15 Marines and 2 medevacs versus 16 roaches and 25 hydras. And you just, it feels like you just have overwhelming numbers. Alright, so any questions about anything? Does anything not make sense, or how you feeling?
Oh, this is pretty much the same as B2GM. We're just a little bit lighter layer, creep tumor at the natural, and the 3rd goes down around like 30 supply or so. 30 or 31 supply.
Yeah, your 3rd goes down. As soon as you react to it and you go, oh wow, he's not going to be able to punish me at all, and he is also expanding, I feel like I could take my 3rd if I want to. And that's going to roughly be around 30 supply, because that's around the time your overlord's going to get to his natural to see that. And then that's when you then, instead of making the layer, you then go, okay, no layer, I'll make the 3rd. But you still make the queen, you still make the drones, and you just don't inject your 3rd. So you don't make the layer and you don't inject your 3rd, which is going to allow you to do everything else about the build, but still make your drones. Because the layer and the larva at your 3rd, the extra larva at your 3rd that you'd have to make really early, that instead is going to be a 3rd hatchery. And you're going to get the third hatchery, which is going to give you more larvae a little bit later, and it's going to explode your larvae faster. So overall, you will get more larvae in total doing this to go towards max. But you won't have a situation where you're going to have a bunch of larvae sitting on your hatcheries because you over-injected and you over-teched. And then even though you think you should have more larvae because you're like, well, I'm taking my third and I'm focusing on injects. So that should mean more larvae, right? But in reality, no, it doesn't, because you're actually wasting the second form of larva, which is one of the two forms of larva, which is generation, automated generation, because you're capping larva over and over and over. Which means that, again, for everyone, like a lot of people don't realize that concept. They're like, oh, it's all about injects. If I choose inject, that means I'm choosing more larva. And if I choose creep, it means I'm choosing less larva. It's obvious. It makes sense. And, you know, in a perfect world where you could spend your larva, it does make sense. But if you can't fucking spend it and you stop being able to, you just have extra larva always sitting in your hatcheries that you can't spend, you actually are, basically what you're doing is you're spending energy on your queens to inject larva to replace larva generation automatically because you're capping over and over anyways. So you're actually, like, again, it's literally the exact same. Like, if you just have a hatchery being injected on full larva capacity over and over and over, versus you have a hatchery that's being spent constantly and it never has 3, but it's just generating. That's the exact same larva income, like in terms of how much you generate. Okay. A lot of people just don't think about that as a concept, and it's 100% true though. But yeah, just maximizing like your expenses. Go ahead.
What's a good timer for me to know, like, if I'm delaying the layer? When should I make the layer?
When you have no larva.
Okay. So just spend all the larva, get my money back up, make sure the larva's all gone, and then I take my layer.
Yeah, so like pay attention to your inject timers. Always look at it like, okay, I have no larva, and my inject is like 3 seconds from being done, and I only have 150 minerals. Maybe I'll save that and spend it on the inject that's literally about to spawn. Because if I have, each hatchery I have, that counts for like 150. Because it's 3 drones per hatchery. That's going to immediately spawn on the hatcheries of larva. So that's 300 minerals right there. And if you only have 150 right now, and you're going to need to spend 300 in 3 seconds, well, definitely don't make a layer right then. But if you have a larva inject that's going to spawn off your hatcheries in like 18 seconds, and you have 150 minerals and no larva, you could easily make a layer then and be like, well, I have plenty of time to make enough money again to then spend that inject in 18 seconds. And that's kind of how you should look at it. You should just prepare to spend your larva always. That's always priority number 1. And then everything else gets just like added on top of that. Everything else. All right. Any other questions about anything?
That's it, dude.
All right, man.
Appreciate your time.
I told you to do fucking, even though I'm tired, best coaching. All right, dude. Well, thank you for doing it. I appreciate you, man. And I will, I'll see you on the stream and let me know how it goes. And I'll also have this VOD for you by probably tomorrow.
Cool. I'll probably hit you up in a week or 2, and we'll do another one of these.
All right, it sounds good. Good luck, and thank you again, man.
Thank you.
Take it easy, dude.
All right, bye.
All right, guys. GG. 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 All right, everybody, thank you guys for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed it. This has been a platinum level coaching lesson for Zerg. If you guys liked it, if you guys want to see more just like this, I have a YouTube channel that you can check. And if you're not already watching it on YouTube, but if you are watching it on YouTube, you guys can go check out more of my content. I have a Bronze GM series, which is like a guide basically on how to get better at StarCraft according to every league that you're in. And I also have many, many, many more replay analysis and coaching videos, which are all just basically teaching people how to play StarCraft. So go check those out if you're interested. Thank you for watching. See you in the next one. Until then, take it easy. Good luck and peace out.